Now, where did I put it? Ah, here it is.
Welcome to the Toolbox, where my guests and I discuss the tools they use every day to manage life, trauma, and everything in between. It may not be applicable right now, but it's another tool for your toolbox. And I hope you enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome back to Tools for the Toolbox. I am Chance Burles, as you know, aka Big Bird. I have another outstanding guest for you here today, and we will kick it off the same way I always do with the same question. Who are you, and what is your military background?
You betcha. I am Chad Mclean, located in Phoenix, Arizona, down here in the States.
Mm-hmm.
Quick military background. I went in the military as just a quick little 11 Bravo bang bang, just regular grunt. Um, Went through basic training, about the 10th week in basic training, got an airborne slot. The drill sergeant didn't even know I existed, so I did my job well and shut my
Yep.
mouth and put my head down. So I got an airborne slot. Went to airborne school. In airborne school, the Ranger liaison came down here in the States, Fort Benning, Georgia. It's the home of the infantry. So you got Fort Benning, Georgia, and 75th Ranger Regiment. That's just down the street from airborne
Mm-hmm.
school. And so we loaded up, and boom! Next thing you know, I'm going through RIP. Back then, it was a Ranger Indoctrination Program. Right now, I believe it's RASP, was Ranger
Okay.
Association. I'm not really sure fully what it stands for,
Yeah.
um, but went through RIP and was in Ranger Battalion. Was part of the weapons platoon.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a Carl Gustav gunner, and before my accident and shift of my whole military career, I was getting ready to go into sniper section
Ooh.
as well. So I was excited about that. Did really well in a sniper camp that essentially the Special Forces group put on there at Fort Lewis, Washington. They came to battalion and ran us through a pretty legit sniper school, and through that,
Sweet.
I caught the eyes of some folks and was going to roll into the sniper section. But my jump happened, and that's where the trajectory of my military kind of career completely changed.
So what happened with what jump happened? Like,
Yeah, so second bat was kind of known for airfield seizures, right? Jumping
mm-hmm.
in, taking over airfield, setting up security, letting Navy SEALs kind of land softly and go clean hangars, right? Always got to give those guys a hard time.
Yeah.
Um, but anyways, we're jumping into Spokane, Washington, where it's Fairchild is the Air
Mm-hmm.
Force Base. And it was a night jump, and it was a full-on battalion takeover of this airfield. Well, lo and behold, the Air Force went the wrong damn way in their flight pattern. And when we all jumped out, you had dudes that were hitting hangars, you had dudes that were hitting planes. I believe, to my recollection, there was a lot of guys that ended up getting med boarded because of this jump. It
Mm-hmm.
actually affected the readiness of Second Ranger Battalion at the time.
No doubt.
Um, what's that?
No doubt.
Yeah.
Like,
So in my lieu of what happened to me is, so we're in a night jump, jumped out, and lo and behold, look below, and there's another jumper below me. And they teach you, obviously, in airborne school, right? You got to run off that dude, shoot as quickly as you can, so it doesn't, he
yep.
doesn't take the air and your shoot doesn't collapse. Well, mine collapsed. From that point, I woke up on the ground, and I literally don't know if it was 5 feet, if it was 100 feet, 200. I don't recall it. The only thing I remember really from that night is waking up, and my whole entire bottom half of my body was numb. I couldn't feel my
Mm.
toes. I couldn't feel legs. Didn't know what the fuck was going on. I sat there, tapped, kind of looked, make sure I wasn't bleeding out of any orifices. I didn't have any compound fractures, but I knew I burnt in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that ended up happening as the night goes. The whole night's completely fuzzy to me. About the
Yeah.
only thing I remember was Gibson. I believe that was his name. I'm going to stick to it because it's there. He was a sniper. He was on dirt bikes because that's how the snipers traveled. They had dirt bikes, and he came up and was like, "What are you doing, dude? Where are you at? Gustav guys are over here." Before you know it, I'm running over there, and they're already set up in position. And the training exercise essentially got called because so many dudes got jacked up. I
Yeah.
don't remember the after action review. I don't even remember getting on the fucking plane and getting back to Fort Lewis.
Damn.
So, again, being part of that group of men, right? You don't say anything. You shut your mouth, right? And you take your Motrin and you move on. So
Mm-hmm.
I did that. But lo and behold, my back is a complete disaster. And we're training every day. And you know how hard battalion guys train. Before you know it, I'm getting Percocets. I'm getting
Mm-hmm.
whatever I can to numb the back pain so I can continue. Well, before you know it, now I'm drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And in battalion, just like any other soft unit, you fucking drink a ton. And so
Mm-hmm.
you put that in mix with a bunch of alpha males and taking painkillers, and next thing you know, there's fights going on in the barracks, or you're going out on the town fighting, and before you know it, I'm
Mm-hmm.
making all sorts of really, really bad decisions.
Yep.
From hazing dudes, from you name it. So I got kicked out. I got kicked out of Ranger Battalion,
Wow.
and getting kicked out of there was like crushing my dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's all I wanted to do. I was just a Montana kid. I didn't have any large skill sets. You know, I wasn't really good student. I wasn't really real active in sports. I was more the kid in high school. I liked to party and be friends with everybody. You
Right.
know,
Yep.
kind of the oddball, but did that, and then I was a regular infantry guy. They kicked me down the road to what we call Deuce Four. It's the Electric Strawberry. They're part of the group, the infantry group out of Hawaii, the 25th Infantry Division. So I was a
Yep.
regular leg at that point. Airborne
Yep.
wings meant nothing. Your scroll didn't mean anything. You were just a regular dude, and that ate at me and ate at me and ate at me. And still to this day, it was one of the big things that just deteriorated who I was as a person, because that's all I wanted to do is be a tier one guy, right? I just wanted to
Yep.
be in soft. I wanted to continue that trajectory up the chain, as you will. And I felt like at 19 years old, 20 years old, making these decisions and getting kicked out, I didn't have any good communication skills. So
Yeah.
I was mad. I was pissed off at the world, and I ended up getting out because I didn't think I'd ever recover from that. You know, when you get booted from battalion, like, your file is sealed up. It's a top secret clearance. It's sealed up. It's in some archive someplace. So
Mm-hmm.
any of my reviews that I got from NCOs or anything like that, it's all sealed away. Like, I don't have it. I'm sure I could request it and get it now. But that it's there. And the thing is, I changed my name. My last name was Elder. It's Mclean now. So a lot of guys are like, you were
Uh,
never in, like, you're not. I'm like, fuck you guys. Like, I got my certificate. I got my fucking berets. Like, what else do you want from me? I changed my last name. Like, and it was
yeah.
changed. I basically changed it to carry on my grandfather's last name, who I was
Okay.
super, super close with. So
Yeah.
that's why there was some confusion on a lot of that kind of stuff with guys. But
Mm,
in a nutshell, that was my quick and skinny of just a quick resume of
yeah.
Ranger Battalion in my service. So
That's so hard too. I mean, man, I got in, I was 23 and I was looked at as an old man,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
like you look back on it now and you're like, dude, you're making huge life altering decisions on a daily basis
hmm
as a 20, 19, 18-year-old, right? That just you don't have any experience to pull from.
no,
And it's tough, especially, man, like, so I got in when I got in, Canada was like at war. Like, we were
mm,
in Afghanistan, we were in Canada, like, we were fighting. When I was doing my training, actually, all through 2006 was, Operation Medusa was happening, and they were like the battles of the White School, and we were taking casualties, and the instructors were on us, like, just like, this is where you're going. Understand that.
hmm
And we were like,
yeah,
let's get some, right? And you're like, ah.
yep, yep,
But there were I had a buddy of mine who broke his back during the course, just done, and that's it. Bye bye. And he was off course, and he tried to get back on a second course, but his back was just destroyed.
yeah,
And it was sad. It was on we were doing a bridge panel lift, and it's a 4-man lift. It's not a huge amount of weight, but it's really awkward. And
mm-hmm.
yeah, so you got to go to full press, and about halfway through press, the opposite corner that was of that panel just let go, just stepped off. So all the weight
Shit,
transfer, and he just like, and like we all heard it crack, and we are like, oh,
yeah, yeah,
that's not good. And he was gone, just
mm,
Like, and I think, especially when you're young, you don't really realize how fragile you are.
No,
Right? Like as a human being, right?
no,
Especially for dudes who are like, I'm gonna go do this crazy thing, and I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do that. You never
yeah.
think like you're gonna be the guy that gets hurt.
And that's it. And what I came to realize through my plant medicine journey, right? A lot of this stuff is slowly starting to kind of connect, a lot of different weird aha moments, as you will.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm in this ecosystem and I'm seeing other guys, I'll mention, I don't know his name, but I do follow him and I appreciate what he does. But American Yogi, um,
Okay.
I just read his bio the other day, and essentially that's what happened to him. Is he was on a jump, I believe, in 2015, ended up fucking up his back completely, and that's how he got out.
Yep.
And so, I see more and more of like, these hard charging guys, and what I'm understanding is there's more guys like me that are out there that were in soft units or they're in regular infantry, and they jacked up their body somehow, and they did the same thing and they got out. So I can only imagine how many other thousands of men are like me and you that have gone through this shit, and you're on the other side of being hurt, and it crushes your dreams, right? And
Yeah.
so then the negative self-talk comes in, and then before you know it, now you're drinking more, you're
Yep.
popping more pain pills, you're getting in fights, you're aggressive, you're mad at the world. So when I went through the plant journey, I'm like, dude, like, it's all right, man. It's part of life. You're a human being. Your body broke, and
Yep.
because, like you said, because I was 19 or 20, I didn't understand how to communicate that properly, so I could probably get the help I needed. And who knows, maybe I could have been on a trajectory to keep growing up the ladder, but that's
Yeah.
never going to be known. So I
Exactly.
can't keep eating that piece of cake.
No, and the tough part is that like we were like that. Not only is it a leadership failure, right? Like
Yeah,
a squad leader or a team leader, somebody should have been like, that dude is messed up. like no doubt.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and we should get him checked out by the docs.
Hmm.
We had an exercise we went on it where we had multiple injuries, multiple, like not just, oh, I sprained my ankle during a ruck march, or like
Compound
at,
fractures and shit.
at one point an HL, one of our heavy lift trucks, went off a bridge and into a river,
Oh shit.
and the three people in the front couldn't get out, and actually one of them was submerged completely, and luckily one of our combat divers was there and was mouth breathing for him. He'd come up, take a breath, go back down, give it to him, come up, and he did that for like a freezing cold river in the mountains
Yeah.
for I think it was like 10 or 12 minutes
Holy
before he got
shit.
out of the water,
So I
because
mean, you
they
just
didn't have anything to get the truck off. Like it
yeah.
was insane.
But I mean,
uh
I think that's what people forget, right? Is we train at such a high level
yeah.
that people it happens. Like you just read about, I think there was someone in a PJ team here in the States, or I think it was even a SEAL team, that ended up dying in training,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that was a perfect example that you just gave. Think of the trauma that fucking dude's going through, that was trapped underwater, that was getting mouth breathed by some other guy for
Yeah.
12 fucking minutes. You don't know
Yeah.
if you're coming out of that. You don't know if he's going to come back down. So it doesn't have to be a full on combat trauma. Like, that's
No.
trauma in itself. And I think that's where people need to realize, like, I hate saying this, because I'll probably get backlash for it, but I hate when people put the word combat in front of veteran, because
Mm.
it's almost like they're measuring trauma dicks, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm a combat veteran, you're a veteran. Well, fuck, man. You can't really put a threshold on trauma, right? Because you don't know
No.
what that person's childhood was like. You don't know what their life was prior to the military. Then the
Yep.
military, blows that up and emphasizes the trauma that you had there, and then you go through the hazing and the just the military training is all. We all know it. We get deprogrammed when you go in,
Yeah.
right? We don't want to call it brainwashing, but you get programmed a certain way to think a certain way, to do things a certain way.
100%. Yep. When they go back to basics, right? When you think about it, I actually gave a talk on Remembrance Day at my son's school, and I was trying to get the kids. I wanted to get them an understanding of what life was like in the army. So
Yeah.
I was like, who here knows how to tie their shoes? And all the hands went up, right? And
Mhm.
I was like, no, you don't. They were like, what? And they were just like, but I know how to tie my shoes. I'm like, that's the army right there. That is
Yeah.
it, because you're going to go back to basics: how to fold your clothes, how to brush
Yeah.
your teeth, how to polish your boots, how to and break it down to the smallest, the smallest detail. And there's a reason
Yeah.
for it, and it's
Yep.
necessary,
Yep.
absolutely. But
Yep.
that's you. I always say, I got a lot of buddies who, they're veterans now, or they're about to become veterans. They're like, oh yeah, I'm
Hmm.
gonna go back to civvy street and I'm gonna be a dirty civvy, and I'm like, dude, that ship sailed. That ship sailed
Yeah.
in the you know the day you graduated basic training. You will forever now be a veteran
Yeah.
afterwards, right?
Yeah.
You're a
Yeah.
civilian, then you're a soldier, now you're a veteran. There is no
There's
civilian
no
life.
civilian. I still to this day struggle with it, and it's one of the reasons I can't go back to corporate America. I
Mm,
can't deal with the bullshit. I can't deal with the not thinking outside the box, right?
mm-hmm.
And I know there's thousands of other veterans that are in the same shoes. I've almost said there's companies out there that just need to make departments full of veterans. So
Mm.
that way, when we're real quick on our emails, or we're talking and we're dropping f bombs, or we're saying certain verbiages of "shut your cock garage," people aren't getting fucking offended, right? I mean, we have a different language,
We do, 100%.
so I've tried conveying that in any corporation I've been in. Like, hey man, I'm built this way. I can try to be as soft as I want, but I don't care how much remedial training you want to put me through on P's and Q's, but I'm gonna try. I'm gonna give it a whirl. But by goddamn, I am who I am to the core, and that's not gonna change.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm 50-50 on that, because
Yeah.
there is there's a point where we'll go too far,
Hmm.
right? And
I agree. I agree.
there's definitely a point where, it's funny actually. My wife pointed this out to me. Was I'd be hanging out with my kids, and my wife, when we'd be out doing stuff, and it'd be ha ha ha, all, hey, look, there's dad. And I would see another veteran or another buddy of mine that would show up, and it'd be like, dude, what the fuck is up? How you
Yep.
doing? And just like you click into that mode.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then my wife would be sitting there like, you do know that you shift gears the
Hmm.
moment you're around
Hmm.
another veteran. And she
100%.
called me a social butterfly. And I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I am not a social butterfly. She's like, if you see somebody with veteran plates on, you go talk to them. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I do.
Yeah.
So
It's the biggest fraternity in the world,
yeah,
right? I
yeah,
mean, you're in Canada, I'm in the United States, right? We're both talking about mental health. We're both talking veteran shit. Like, I don't know all the bells and whistles to the Canadian military. You don't know it all to the United States military. But we have a common ground, right? We both served. We both signed up and handed our country a blank check to say, okay, do whatever you want with our body and our mind. We're here to serve. So
hmm,
I think that goes even across the pond, right?
oh,
I
it
mean,
does.
it doesn't matter where you're from. Like, veterans, we all have gone through some kind of bullshit, and we should collectively try to help one another, no matter what
Yeah,
your rank, no matter if you're a tip of the spear guy, or if you're a cook, or what have you, right? Like, we all went through some bullshit. So, like,
hmm,
sure, there's severities to it, but man, like, let's just get on the same bus and try to drive and help each other. That's our biggest goal at Mental Joe, is like, let's just bring awareness to this. And again, that's why it's Mental Joe, right? Your
yeah,
average Joe. I don't feel like there's a spot for average Joes to understand the mental health side, the plant medicine side of stuff, because no one really talks to them, right? Because they're not
yeah,
at the tip of the spear, right?
hmm,
They don't get the shows made after them. They don't get the movies made after them. They're kind of a forgotten group of people. So that's kind of collectively how we want to use Mental Joes, to like
yeah.
really talk to those average Joes that need that help, right? That are kind of forgotten.
That's what it's about, man. And I've talked to Kiwis, Aussies,
Yeah,
Canadians, Brits, Americans, and the one thing that binds us all is we're soldiers, man. We're
that's it.
soldiers, or sailors, or Marines, whatever name you want to. But like, I've and I've talked to tip of the spear, right? Special forces, hardcore dudes,
Yeah,
multiple tours, going around doing all the crazy stuff you see on TV. I've talked to Navy logistics officers. I've talked to clerks. I've talked to and it's all the same. Initially, I started
hmm,
this talking. I was going to talk to only veterans, and I was like, okay, I should probably reach out, expand my field a little bit. but it was basically I can talk to another veteran
Hmm.
with like no preamble, no awkwardness, right? You just, dude, what's up? How's it going? Right? Like, you just kick
I
into
mean,
that shit.
we take it for what it is, right? Like, there's
Yep.
going to be some verbiages that I might slip and say a word that I don't mean to say, but because I'm in a comfortable situation with another veteran that I know isn't going to get butthurt if I slip up and say something off wall,
Yep.
like it helps us bring our walls down. So that's the same thing, like in with the plant medicine. Like you, you and I, regardless, like I'm there to protect your six.
Mm-hmm.
So if you trust me enough to protect your six, trust me enough to know that I'm going to try to guide you through your mental health journey and give you different resources so you can do the research on yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I think it's I had this little discussion with a friend of mine. I think it's time. I think that's the issue is that
yeah,
within the military, time is so important, right? Timings,
that's it.
timings, timings, timings,
Time,
timings,
time,
time.
time. Yep,
Everything is timings.
yep,
And then once you're out and you start thinking about healing or you start thinking about, betterment or progress or whatever you want to, I want to change or whatever, we expect a timing,
mhm,
right? There's this like, okay, fix me right now so that I
yeah,
can go,
yeah.
right? Whereas it's actually it is literally a journey, right?
It's a
As you
journey.
just stated, it
Yeah,
is a journey, and you got to go through ups and downs and try this and have it not work and try that and oh that
yeah,
kind of work, but maybe I'll fit and it's not the same either. I can't give you a cookie cutter solution. And one
no,
of the things I say to people is like, I can show you the door,
that's it.
and like, it's up to you from there.
Hmm.
Outside of that,
Hmm.
I can talk to you, and I can, I've stayed up at night at 2 o'clock in the morning on the phone with people who are going through a rough time. Just like, yeah, man, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
What do you need to do? Right? What do you need to do?
That's it. You put it, yeah, you have to put it back into their lap.
Yeah.
Um, and I think you've seen it. I've definitely seen it in this space. People will reach out and, they'll say, hey, man, like I haven't drank in 6 months. I'm proud of you, man. Like, that's good. Okay. What's the next step, though,
Mm-hmm.
to keep you from going back to drinking? Are
Yeah.
you working out at the gym? Are you finding a hobby? Are you journaling? Are you meditating? Are you open to plant medicine? Like,
Yeah.
what do and then you'll get the poo poo of, well, I'm not doing that. That's a drug. Okay, but you fucking pound alcohol every single night and you're on Percocet and you're on SSRIs. Like, help me help you, bud, because I
Yeah.
mean, as you know, SSRIs and all that stuff, it doesn't regrow your neurotransmitters in your brain. It numbs you. So you walk through
Mm-hmm.
life numb. That's it. You're walking through life numb. So we got to get out of our own damn way, and we've got to learn to trust those veterans that are speaking up, like you and myself, and many many others that are out there
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, there's other ways of doing this stuff. We don't need to bang our head against the wall anymore."
Yeah. And we're so used to that too, right? Of just do it harder,
That's
right?
it.
It's not working. Do it
Yes.
harder.
Yep.
The drinking isn't working. Okay, well, I'm going to drink more.
More.
And then I'm going to drink more. Or, oh, one Percocet's not enough. Okay, I'll take two.
That's
Okay, I'll
it.
take four. Okay,
Yeah.
and you just, it becomes this never ending push to just drive and drive. And I realized, I was working with my doc doing equine therapy, working with horses.
Mm.
And initially, when I first started, I always wanted to be in the herd. I wanted to be around the horses. I wanted to be there.
Hmm.
And my doc, what I noticed after a while was that she was actually pushing me to do it less so that
Mm.
I would work with a horse or I would work
Not the group.
outside the herd or I'd work. And what I realized was that that's the actual growth portion of it is separation and reducing what you're using so
Hmm.
that you
Hmm.
can get back to a natural life
Baseline.
baseline. Exactly. So that you can get back to where you are good to go without other stuff. And like I still do CBD and THC, and CBD keeps my pain down, THC keeps the brain from like spiraling out of control like it does, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm always on the lookout for where I can mitigate some of that. Like I would love for a point in time where I don't have to take anything for pain.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I work out. So I do jujitsu. So I work on my mental health. So I work on journaling. So I work on this and I work on that. And I try to find other avenues so that I can slowly get back to baseline from beforehand where I was healthy.
Well, into what you were saying, how we all just push so hard, right?
Oh God,
Especially in the veteran community, like we just got to go, go, go. And one thing that I've learned real recently is, so when I was in battalion, you being a jujitsu guy, the Gracies actually came up to second bat, and
sweet.
so we had. I'm gonna screw the fucking names up, but we had Hoist there, right?
Yeah,
We had Renzo, and then we had his dad. His dad is Hilo, right? I think it's Hilo Gracie. Probably going to screw that name up, but
sure.
they came
Yeah.
up to battalion again. This is 23 years ago, but they came to
Okay.
battalion. That was the first introduction to jiu-jitsu, and I loved jiu-jitsu, and we rolled and we did all that. But life goes on, and what I'm realizing is, as much as I would love to do jiu-jitsu, like I've got two young boys, and being a jiu-jitsu guy, like it's a lot of dedication. Like you can't just go once a week and be like, oh, that was fun. No, you could, but are you going
You
to
can.
progress? Are you
You
going to get
will.
better? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And yeah, like I got two young boys too. And actually, this is what the benefit for me, at least in this, was.
Yeah.
I'm training my training partners,
Oh, I love it. I
right?
love it.
Like both of my boys do jujitsu,
Yeah.
and I do jujitsu, so I get the benefit of in 10 years when I'm a black belt, my boys are going to be friggin' monsters,
Monsters. Yep.
monsters, right?
Yep.
And I'm going to be fighting just to keep up with them because they're going to be in
Yeah.
their prime. My boys are 5 and 9 right now, and then when they're adults, they're going to be.
Yeah, and where I was going with that is
Sorry, yeah, I
like,
cut you off.
no, it's all good. I just no, I want to get back into that, but right now for me, and this is where I think veterans have a hard time understanding that. Right now is not the time and place, and that's okay.
Yep.
For me, it's getting Mental Joe launched, getting Mental
Yep.
Joe into a very comfortable place. You see kind of a corner guitar right here.
Mm-hmm.
So my other thing is, my goals for this year is be a better meditator. I want to meditate more, and I want to learn how to play guitar. So that's my jiu-jitsu right now,
Yep.
right? Like
Absolutely.
that's what I've got time for. Like, and I'm saying this because I think you get it too, is so many veterans are trying to cram all this stuff in. Oh, I want to be good at jiu-jitsu. Oh, I want to be good at guitar. Or I want to be a good meditator. Or I want to be a good well, that's great that you're doing all that shit, but you're doing all of it, but at what capacity are you doing it at? Are you doing it at a 50% capacity because all these other things are occupying your time? So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm saying. Like, I think a lot of us, we fill our plate so full that we don't ever step back and say, okay, what's truly important? What truly do I have the time to do right now?
Yep.
And let's do that. And these other little things you want to do, you can do them, but let's focus on these things right now, and those other doors will open when time comes, I
When
guess.
time, exactly. Yeah, the I was talking with Fran from the Jedberg podcast, and we were talking about this too. Is people want to get in shape. Well, so they like, I'm gonna eat right, and I'm gonna work out every day, and I'm gonna drink enough water. I'm gonna sleep well, and I'm gonna and you're like, you just adding more and more. You're not going to keep any of those, right? Like,
No.
because it's too much. You have to focus on one thing, get it so that it becomes, and it's actually very much, this is the funny thing, very much like military training, right? I hand you a rifle. We're going to work on the load.
Yeah.
That's it. And we're going to work on the load for the next 3 days. And until you can do it without thinking about it, then we're going to move on to the unload. And then we're going to like get just slow progress, focused progress will be better than working on 15 things at once. And I'm learning, I'm playing guitar too. I've had a guitar for years. I've been strumming on it for years, never took the time to actually learn.
Gotcha.
So, jiu-jitsu now is consistent, right? That's something I do without thinking about it.
That's your gym time. That's it.
I go there, I work out, good to go.
Yeah.
Just recently, as you were saying, I was like, okay, well, that is now good to go. I'm going to add something else in. And I realized that I've never done a lot of dry fire on my pistol. Okay. So now I'm working on that, and just 20 minutes a day, right? 10 minutes a day, 5 minutes, whatever. You just get a little piece of it, and then I'll go to the guitar. But that's not my focus. Those are just extra things, right? Those are just little bits.
And I love where you're going with that, because I'm going to piggyback off that. And that's what got me to where I'm at today. Because the same thing. So I know we're kind of all over, but I love the conversation flow. But to get back to where I got on this journey, 2.5 years ago, I almost took my life, right? I was just done. I was fucking wore out. I was tired, right? So within this last 2.5 years, to your point of adding things in slowly here and here, that's what I did. So I was always hard on myself. Same thing. I need water. I got to hit the gym. I got to hit it hard. I got to get, I got to get after it. Well, I slowly was like, first of all, let's just see if I can fucking eat right. So I hired a macro coach, and the
Nice.
macro coach taught me how to eat. So I tracked every time. If it was coffee, I put it in, man. So
Nice.
then I learned, okay, this is what a diet looks like. This is what my macros look like. So now I'm like, okay, I know how to eat right. Okay, got that down. Boom. I'm gonna just go to the gym now. So then I just pushed hard, gym. And now I'm like, okay, I can routinely go to the gym every single day. Now I know I can eat right. I know I'm in the gym because now the gym's routine. Let's put those together. So
Mm-hmm.
same thing, put those together. Now it's like, okay, I'm eating right. I'm at the gym. I'm drinking at least a gallon of water a day. What else can I add in? Because now those are concrete. Those are fucking routines.
Mm-hmm.
So that's to your point. That's why I wanted to make those points of like,
Absolutely.
that's huge. And I think a lot of veterans need to hear that. Like, you don't need to do everything at once. Take one thing, learn that, conquer that, beat that, make that a routine, and then add something else in.
Yeah.
Whether it's journaling, whether whatever. And don't beat yourself up if you only journal once a week. Journaling is meant to just reflect. It's not meant to, okay, what can I'm grateful because, and you sit there for 5 minutes thinking what you're grateful for.
Yeah.
Put the journal, walk away, man. It's not the time to journal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
And
right.
a lot. Well, and the funny thing is that none of us learn that way,
No.
right? Where you don't just dump 7 subjects on somebody and be like, okay, have fun, right?
Yeah.
Even tip of the spear guys, right? You got this hardcore, SEAL Team 6 dude who's the team leader, whatever. That guy started as a civilian,
Yeah.
just like everybody else, man. And went through the training slowly over time, learned the skills, and at any point in time, he's failed many times all the way
Yeah.
through, over and over and over again. It was the consistency that managed all the way through. And
That's it.
um, I was gonna ask you on this one,
Yeah.
was how was the transition out? So like you went from Ranger Battalion
Yeah.
to back to the infantry,
Yep.
hung out in the infantry for a little while,
Mhm.
and then was it a medical release? Was it just a standard I'm getting out and then trying to deal
Just
with that afterwards, or like?
yeah. For me, it was just standard. It was. I was in my own head again. I was. I got it when I was shit. Just yeah. I turned 21. I was 21 and a half.
Yeah.
I got out, and because I went in right after high school, like I threw the cap in the air, that fucker didn't land, and I was already on a plane to basic training. That's how quick it was.
Yeah.
But when I got out, it was wild, man. I mean, I didn't get a discharge physical, right? I didn't do any of that. I remember going to a huge auditorium. They talked to us. They said, you're going to walk through, you're going to get your paperwork, you're going to get any kind of finalization of stuff, and essentially you're done. I had a buddy that, here's all your personal items, here's your duffel bag. We drove out the gate of Fort Lewis. He took me up to SeaTac Airport just out of Seattle there, and I flew back to Billings, Montana, and that was it.
Dang.
There was no taps. There was no, hey man, like civilian life's gonna be tough.
Yeah.
And again, I had some money, stashed away, so I didn't really do much. I played softball, I drank beer, I reconnected with friends, and I hated it, man.
Yeah.
It was such a hard transition. I didn't understand that. Like, your patience for civilians is none,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you don't understand why they're bitching about their 8 to 5 job or their minuscule bullshit, because you're like, dude, like, I was excited to get a Snickers bar from being in the field for 2 fucking weeks, and these guys are pissed off because their foot got wet in a thunderstorm or some shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, the transition out was horrible. And I think they're getting better about it, and I've talked with other veterans about this. I wish there was a way, if you signed up for, let's say you signed up for 4 years, I wish there was a way that you sign up for 4 years and 4 months.
Yeah.
And in those 4 months you're in civilian clothes, right? You're in a completely different barracks with everyone else that's transitioning out, and you go through counseling, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go through what I would almost call a deprogramming, kind of an atmosphere where you learn how to, have conversations with civilians. So you're not dropping the F bomb every 2 minutes, and you're not saying stuff that's off the wall that offends people.
Hmm.
Again, that was 23 years ago I got out, and I know they've made strides, but from the veterans that I'm hearing that are still getting out today, it's still a shit show when they get out. Every veteran I've talked to, and I'm sure you're the same. Like, I was in a recruiter's office probably 3 to 4 times within that first 6 years of being out because I was like, I need to go back in. I can't.
Yep.
This civilian life is miserable. I didn't understand it.
Yeah, I actually had a friend of mine who got out and they got back in. We were talking. He actually, unfortunately, he died in a training accident as well.
Mm,
Um, he he told me the same thing. Was I was like, yeah, man, I'm getting out in a few months. It's gonna be great. I'm gonna be with my family, and it's gonna be awesome. And he's like, I'll see you back here again in a couple years. I was like, what? He's like, no, trust me, man. You're gonna want to be back in a heartbeat. And there's still times, there's still
yeah,
days where I'm like, yeah, I kind of wish I had still in uniform.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
but now what I do is I call one of my buddies who's still in. And I'm like, hey, buddy, what are you up to? And he's like, I'm on some freaking exercise. I'm like, cool, man, thanks. That's all
yeah.
I needed.
Just need that confirmation and not
Yeah,
doing it.
like cool. Yeah, I get it. I remember what those were like. I don't need to do that again.
Yeah,
But so now, if you could go back,
yeah.
you get 23 years, talk to
Mhm.
yourself. One piece of advice to make that transition easier.
Whew. It would be. I mean, for me, it'd be go get help right away.
Hmm.
Right. Really own your shit, right?
Yeah.
And just go get the help. Go, and I did. I was on medication. I was on, I probably ran through 10 different psychologists or psychiatrists, and I went through all kinds of testing and whatnot. Um, but man, that's a great question. I don't know what I would say, you know, because plant medicine wasn't a thing then. Plant medicine is more of a thing now where we're actually seeing the studies and what it's doing to help people.
Yeah.
But I think it would be to, essentially hold tight, man. Like, you're going to get through this. It's okay. This is part of the process. It's going to suck. But just being a little bit more aware of
Yeah.
that transition and having a better plan in place, I guess.
Yeah, I've heard the spectrum too from people that got out and it was like super smooth and good to go, and I've heard from people that it was just an absolute train wreck. And
Yeah.
one of the most common things I hear from people is patience,
Yes.
just
I would
patience,
agree.
patience, patience, and a
Yeah.
lot of the issues would get mitigated initially from that, just having the patience to be like, yeah, there's just take time, man. It's all good. Just take the time, go through the
Yeah.
process. Yeah, it's tough getting out. And you're right. I had a conversation with another friend of mine that we were talking like there's a boot camp to get in. There should
There
be an
should.
out camp to get out. Right?
Exactly.
Like just separate some people. Go to how to do your taxes.
Yeah, and I don't even care if it's like you could take an old World War II barracks that's, I don't know, in fucking Great Falls, Montana, or
Mm-hmm.
in Kansas, right, mid country, someplace where, and that's all that base is meant to do, is to out process veterans, right? So
Yep.
my home station was Fort Lewis. You fly to Kansas, and that's your outboarding, and you got
Yep.
to go through tests, and you've got to go through counseling. So yeah, there needs to be some kind of like out boot camp that needs to
Yeah.
happen to help men and women transition out easier. It has to
Yeah.
be. There has to be something.
There's ways, obviously. We just need to figure out what those are. But
Yeah,
well, so when you're saying you've been talking about plant medicine and stuff like that,
yeah,
let's dive into that because um, what does that entail? Of like how much what is considered plant medicine
yeah,
versus not?
yeah. Great question. I'm still a novice in a lot of this, right? So I'm still learning as I go through. Like I mentioned, roughly 2.5 years ago, ended up
Hmm.
almost taking my life. We're talking the XT Springfield to the head. The wife staring at me, and I was tired. There's no alcohol involved. I wasn't drunk. I was just
Hmm.
wore out. I was such a high pinged out place. Um, I went into the psych ward for 2 weeks. They, signed me with 150 milligrams of Effexor and kicked me out the door. And through that process, I was able to, be away from phones and television. So I was able to really kind of sit down and, when I had the conversations with the wife, because I think I was allowed like one or two phone calls a day, right? I mentioned to her, like, something's not right in my brain. Like, I know, like, something is not connecting. Like, I need
Mm-hmm.
help, and like, I will kill myself eventually because this pattern just keeps doing this, and I can't get off this repeat pattern train. So my wife dug in and started doing a bunch of research and found ketamine.
Mm-hmm.
And ketamine was used back in World War II, along with being used in a lot of veterinary clinics for an anesthesia. In fact, it's still used to this day, especially in small children, to disassociate them, to reset their arms that get
Mm-hmm.
broke, things of that nature. So she found ketamine, and we started kind of diving in a little bit and trying to learn about it. And I candidly, I kind of went at it willy nilly. Like, I didn't really do a lot of research. I didn't. My biggest thing is I didn't want to go in and have a lot of preconceived notions,
Mm-hmm.
right? We just read that it's been a very huge success rate with people with, PTSD and depression and anxiety, and it's helped them kind of like break those depression, anxiety thought patterns, right? Those
Yeah.
cycles. So I jumped in. Um, Ended up going in and I did infusions. I think infusions for ketamine is the gold standard, right? There's a lot of, I think it's called Spravato, where it's ketamine, where you do the nose spray. And I've
Mm-hmm.
had some buddies on that, and they're like, it doesn't do shit. And I'm like, well, because you're doing a nose spray as opposed to something that is injected into the body and let's rock and roll kind of a deal,
Yeah.
right? So did the injections in roughly about my sixth or seventh ketamine um, infusion. It was life changing. It was at that point like I understood where my life changed, and that night of the burn in on that jump was
Mm-hmm.
more clear to me, and that was kind of the aha moment of this is where my life pivoted completely. It also opened me up to, it was clear as day, like, you need to start an apparel company to talk about mental health and bring to light, these other modalities. And
Mm-hmm.
like, when I say non-traditional, I'm open to equine therapy. I'm talking everything because they're all tools in our toolbox. My
Mm-hmm.
tool just happened to be ketamine to get me over the hump.
Yep.
And the way I can explain it now is, for those that are listening, is I look at a huge mountain, right? And on this mountain, you've got two sides of it. One side is your negative talk, and the other side is your positivity talk, or your betterment of who you are. And I feel I'm on the other side of that now. The
Mm-hmm.
negative voice is still there, but because it's on the other side of that mountain, it's real distant, right? It's really hard for me to hear. I can still hear it chirping every now and then, but now I'm on this side of the positive voice where now I can say, dude, stop reaching for shit. Stop making shit up. You're a good dude. You're trying to do the right things. That voice is still there, but it's slowly starting to kind of fade as I become a better human being. And I have to
Mm-hmm.
say, ketamine saved my freaking life, point blank. If I wouldn't have done ketamine, you and I wouldn't be here talking, because that's where I was at. I was tired. I was done.
Yep.
And so now you go down that ketamine hole, and before you know it, now you're looking at other things: psilocybin. You're looking at ayahuasca, and I haven't done an ayahuasca. I haven't done an ibogaine. Um, Maybe there'll be a place in the future I do it, down the road to experience, and I can talk to it. But I feel there are other individuals, right, that
Mm-hmm.
probably need that, because, as you know, through your talks and stuff, is ibogaine and ayahuasca are a real punch in the mouth, right? Like, it's an immediate, you need to wake up. And I feel I'm in a pretty good place mentally. I feel like I got a pretty strong foundation now, so it's not like I need to just run off to Peru and go do this stuff. I feel that's, there's others that need that.
Mm-hmm.
But the ketamine, it's wild, man. I didn't realize, I mean, the street drug, it's called Special K. It's been abused. Kids use it. I'm sure you've heard about it, and it raves and the whole nine yards. So trying to convince people, family. I've lost family members. I've lost friends because they think I'm all this, this psychedelic, weird hippy dippy dude. And I'm like, no, man, I'm still me. I'm still the guy that'll, crush a Coors Light with you and drive I drive my Ford F-150. I'm still Chad. I'm softer now. I look at things from a different lens, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, I've done some mushroom trips back in the day when I was,
Mm-hmm.
uh, before the army and all that stuff. It actually held up me getting in for a year and a half because of it. But
Ah.
as a side, I was totally honest when I don't know if they have these in the States, but when we sign up, you get a substance use form, and it's like super detailed: alcohol, tobacco,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
marijuana, and heroin, cocaine, like it
Yeah.
goes down the list. And we're like, and I was like, man, and I was expecting like that I was just going to get like, sign up, do
Like
this
slap on
paperwork,
the hand. Yeah.
and then immediately just be like, okay, now we're going to go test you to be sure, like, were you honest or not? And I was like, okay, so I actually wrote it out, and I couldn't remember the last time I had done them, so I put like, yeah, about a year and a half ago. Yeah, sure, that should be fine. And then they looked at it and they're like, yeah, sorry, you got to have 3 years separation between any psychedelics before you can
Okay.
join the army. And I was like, oh, I just put that in because I didn't
Yeah.
know. And then they were like, yeah, sorry. So anyway,
Yeah.
I eventually got back in, but it was I remember we used to call them mystical journeys,
Yeah.
and it was like a trip to 7-Eleven, but it was
Yeah.
it was a mystical
Yeah.
journey at the time. What
Yeah.
is the what is the actual effect of ketamine when, like, how does it affect the body when you actually take it? What does it do to you?
Yeah. So, and again, each thing. So I've done ketamine with the lozenger that they put underneath your tongue, and I really didn't get much from that experience. The,
Mm-hmm.
the experience I got, it tasted like crap. It was horrible tasting. Um, it's funny. My wife's got videos of me because I told her take some videos of this stuff. But in my first kind of onset with ketamine, there's a video that I'm like rocking, and I'm like patting a baby on the back, right?
Mm-hmm.
No idea why I was doing that. I was airplaying a piano, just wild stuff. Like I can't really narrow it down to say like, oh, I saw all these mystical beings and all these beautiful lights. Now there were some lights and some contortion of different things, and but other than that, like it was just more clarity. It just for the first time I felt like I had like a true sense of like purpose. I felt like I had a true sense of like connectivity to other people. I felt pain that other people have, so more empathetic.
Mm-hmm.
But when you hear some of these folks that are, and again, this is why I say with Mental Joe, like we were that. I feel like we're in that space where people can kind of relate to us of that average Joe person, right? And I don't mean this in any negative connotation to anybody, but in this psychedelic plant medicine world, and some of them will even tell you that there's a lot of people that are way out there in woo land, right?
Yeah.
And you don't need all that shit.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. That's how you handle it. That's your jam, man. I get it. But like when you do this stuff, like you're immediately not going to just start growing out your hair, and you're not going to wear Birkenstocks and all that kind of jazz, And I think that's the label or the stigma that's around that plant medicine and how it
Mm-hmm.
got abused in the 60s, and if you research it and how bad that went down. So as you know, in this area, everyone always talks about.
Hold on one
Yeah, go
second.
ahead.
I'm getting a knock at the door. Sorry. Hold on.
Yeah, you bet, man.
What's up, man? Not right now. When I come up, I'll put it on for you, okay? Yeah? Okay, I'll be up in a little bit. Okay. You go up there. Sorry, my
No, I get
son
it,
was
brother.
sitting there knocking on the door like, I
heard
want
it. I
this
was like-
tattoo put on. Can you put it on right now? No.
No, dude, I'm working here.
Sorry.
No, it's all good.
Hey, cutting you off there. Go carry on though.
No, it's all good. But it's for me, and again, you'll hear it in these areas or this ecosystem. It's setting and integration,
Mm-hmm.
right? When I went to 5 different ketamine clinics here in the Phoenix area, mainly because I wanted to see the difference of all these ketamine clinics, and I'm not knocking any of them. They all have their own way of doing it, but there's no kind of like standard, right? Everyone does it a little bit different. No integration. You got to pay extra for integration. When I'm like, no, like integration is one of the biggest part of this shit. Now that I understand it and I'm on the other side, like I wish I would have like. This is where the default is of like. I wish I would have dug in a little bit more and understood integration, because oh my god, like I can't imagine how much further down the road of my healing path I would be if I actually had true integration.
When you're talking integration, explain that to us, because I'm not sure what is it. Just like a direct IV, or is it? How does it? What are you talking about?
Well, so the infusion part, and I'll get to the integration, but the infusion part is so I've got some pictures on my Instagram, but essentially I'm laying in a zero gravity chair,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm hooked up. I'm hooked up to a heart rate monitor. I'm hooked up to an oxygen tank is right there if you need it, and then it's an IV. They plug in the IV. You got an IV drip, and then they put in the ketamine, and it's pretty fast acting with the actual IV. I would probably say from when they say, "Hey, we've put it in," to my first kind of, "Oh shit, here it comes." It can't be more than 10 minutes because they put it in, and it's like, "Whoa, here we go, we're rolling." And again, it's just weird because I didn't have any of the, like, again, you hear these people that are like, "Oh, I was in La La Land and it was beautiful and all this." I'm not saying it wasn't. I just didn't have that experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, I got a pretty weak stomach from all the years of being on pain meds.
Yeah.
And I got sick as shit on my first ketamine. I came out of it and I threw up, and I was shaking. I was a mess. Again, because we didn't know what to expect. Like I said, I went
Yeah.
into it full blinders because I didn't want any misconceived notions of what this is going to happen.
Yeah.
So when people are like, "Man, you're going to get addicted to this shit," now ketamine does have an addictive quality still to it, and
Mm-hmm.
we know that through research and studies that are out there. But I don't know how you can. You are in such shambles. Like when I was doing the ketamine, we literally scheduled it for late afternoon. So when I would do the ketamine and get pulled off, my wife would drive me home. I would literally walk straight in the bedroom and I'd go to bed because you're wrecked. And you
Yeah.
don't want, when you're done with that, you don't want a bunch of stuff happening, and because you're still in that trance, you're still in there where your neural pathways are wide open, and so you go to a place where you can be quiet and you can set and you can kind of think things through and process. And I would just pass out. And then the next day it was like full blown, like, okay, what did I get out of it? What did I process? What did I feel? What did I think? And so forth. And that's the integration part, right? The integration
Mm.
is your meditation, your journaling, talking to a therapist, or in this line of work, a shaman or a psychonaut, whatever label they want to put on it, right? But I've got a guide that I talk to, and he's a close friend of mine, and his background is that he is a counselor as well.
Mm-hmm.
So he has transitioned over to the plant side medicine, if you will. So that's what it is for integration. Otherwise, you can go plug and play and go do this stuff and kind of do what I did and kind of slowly pick things apart and try to analyze it yourself. And I wasn't too far off the beaten path of what some of those visions were. But yeah, man, I don't know how anyone could want to get addicted to any of this shit because you're a train wreck afterwards. So I don't. It's nasty, man.
Mm. I think, at least in my mind, from my limited experience with psychedelics, um, I can see it being like the desire to not be around life
Mm, mm,
is, I think, what that. Uh, I mean, I can't say I don't have experience with anything much harder than mushrooms, but I
yeah,
can see where people get on, like, I just want to be away again. I just don't want to be here again, and they'll just do whatever
yeah,
they can in order to get to the point where they don't have to be there. And yeah.
yeah. And I think you see that, right? And I think that's the other part too, kind of like the ayahuasca that I mentioned, right? I mean, you
Hmm.
got some people that are going on ayahuasca journeys 2 or 3 times a year,
Yeah.
and in my mind, I'm like, how fucked up are you? Or are you not doing the integration? Are you not owning your shit? Because
Hmm.
same thing. Like I could do a mushroom trip every weekend, but that's
Hmm.
not how I want these medicines to be used. That's my own prerogative, right? I would like these to be used in a very clinical, like, hey, you're jacked up. Let's use these for some help. Let's. But to your point, yeah, I get that. I could see where people are. I don't want to be here, so I'm just gonna, I'm gonna pop a couple caps, or I'm gonna go
Hmm.
take some LSD, or I'm gonna go do some, MDMA to
Yeah.
disassociate and get out of this world that I hate so much. So I do get that standpoint, but man, the way you feel afterwards.
Oh yeah. Well, and this is the same thing as drinking, right? You drink your
Yeah.
face off and you wake up and you feel like crap. But in those
Hmm.
20 minutes when you were hammered and having fun, that was those 20 minutes were super gold, right?
Yeah.
But you're right, without the integration, without the ability to actually see what needs to be fixed, and then going on the work to fix it.
That's it. That's it.
Because, it's great. You can see what doesn't work all day long. You can do that. I know guys that they got prescriptions of like 10 milligrams a day of THC, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a ton, or
Mm-hmm.
10 grams a day. Sorry, not 10, but 10 grams a day, and
Jesus Christ.
they use it, and they spend a whole day stoned out of their tree,
Stone out of their mind.
and you're just like, you're not actually doing any work.
You're numbing
You're
out in a different way.
exactly, you're using a different tool to do the same thing without actually putting the work in. And that's why, again, what I said earlier was, I'm always looking for ways to downgrade, right? I
Yes.
don't want to take these things. They help me to get to where I am and what I do right now,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but I want to get to a point where I don't have to take them.
And we talk about that, right? We talk about baseline, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel now that I am at the baseline or close to the foundation of who Chad McLean really is,
Hmm.
right? And same thing, we opened up and me and my wife talked with her parents about it, and they still couldn't get over the stigma. It's a drug. Oh my God, you guys are doing all these drugs. I'm like, no, like I know where your head's at. I understand the stigma and the labels that are put on these things, but like it's not like I'm popping mushrooms every single day. Like
Yeah.
and even mushrooms again, like I don't like fully how it makes me feel in the body. Like I get real hot with it, I get real cold with it, so I don't enjoy the feeling. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it for a therapeutic reason, to
Hmm.
see what that next level of, let's dig deeper into Chad McLean to see what other shit I can get worked out, and then I'm done. So yeah, maybe I might do it once a year as a reset, right?
Yeah.
Kind of a control alt delete on a computer. But man, yeah, like you said, these guys that are doing 10 grams a day of cannabis or whatever just to numb out, like you said, you're not doing the work. You're just hiding in a different capacity.
Hmm. And it's a real challenge. The looking, I actually just did this recently. I was looking at, I was curious. It's like, how much did I change? Because my wife, when I met my wife, I had just come back from Afghanistan. I was still in the army. She's always known me as Soldier Chance.
Yeah, yeah,
That's it. And she's seen the progression from Soldier Chance into, mental health advocate and podcaster and dad and all these things, right?
yeah,
So she's
yeah.
seen that transition now, and I was always like, what about beforehand? Like,
Hmm.
when I was a kid, before I was in the army, what kind of change was there at that point? And then what kind of change from there? So my wife told me, she's like, you should ask your aunt or your mom or like somebody that has
Yeah,
seen what it was, that shift. So I talked to my aunt, and she was like, honestly, the biggest change was that you were more serious, right? You used to be this super happy, just chill, do whatever you want to do. Everything will be awesome. And then you were very serious
very
about
rigid.
everything.
Yeah,
And then after now, I asked my wife, what's the difference between, when we met and now? And she's like, oh, you take things so much slower. You're so much more calm. You're relaxed. I'm still, I still have issues, but
yeah,
we're at a point now where I'm getting back to that baseline. So
yeah.
for you, what kind of, I don't know if you've actually done this. I'm assuming you have, but what was your biggest change before and after? Like, from when you first started the journey versus now, what do you think
Yeah.
that biggest shift has been?
I think it is fine, like you said perfectly. I think it was that baseline,
Yeah.
right? I walked around for almost 20 years just angry. One, because I was in so much fucking pain,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Yeah.
Two, because I had childhood traumas. My dad was an abusive alcoholic. So you roll that in on top of the military traumas and all that shit,
Mm-hmm.
and then the fact that I was worthless because I was a broke dick ranger, and all this other jazz that I told myself that wasn't who I am. It's not my story.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm getting back to being more empathetic, being that fun guy. I mean, when I was in high school, man, like I was the fun dude. Like, down here in the States, like I'm not sure in Canada, but you'd have homecoming week, right? And so each day you'd have a day of like dress up like nerd day, or it'd be like dress up as 80s day. I was the guy that people would go to school going, what is Chad gonna wear today? This dude doesn't. I dressed up as Forrest Gump and did the whole knee braces out of hangers and yarn, and
Wow, nice.
yeah, I was that guy, right? I was the
Cosplay
fun.
before it was cosplay.
That's 100%. So I feel like I'm getting back to that kid that played, that loved people for who they are and didn't judge and wasn't angry. Um, and I love it because I like that guy. That
Yeah.
guy was fun. That guy was
Hmm.
friends with everybody. He cared about everybody. The angry, short-tempered, didn't give a shit about anybody kind of a guy is slowly dissipating. And I can
Yeah.
feel that, right? I can feel that in relationships I build. I can feel that in folks like you that I'm talking to, because there's a common ground you and I have. We both are now getting back to a baseline of who we truly are, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. It is, I think we're both on that same path of like we can feel where we're transitioning to be more caring and more patient people again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a. I think it's liberating. Actually, I think that's the word
It
I
is.
would use for it. Just letting go of it all, and all
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
anger and the pain and the rage and the self-loathing and all of this stuff. Where
Yeah.
I figured out, at least eventually I figured out, was that the words we use are so powerful.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to realize this, but I use the word only a lot, or just. Like, I was just a combat engineer. I only served 8 years. I only got one tour in, right?
Mm,
And
mm,
just the use of those minimizes the contribution that you put in
yeah, you got
immediately,
it.
right?
Yep, yep.
And once I started taking that little bit of vocabulary out of my uh, that little bit of verbiage out of my vocabulary, it just, like, all the weight lifted. You're like, oh yeah, okay. And now I say, I served 8 years. I was a
Yeah,
combat engineer. I used to say I am a combat engineer. Now I used to be a combat engineer.
used to be. Yeah,
Now I'm a dad. I'm a podcaster. I'm an advocate. I'm a blah 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 blah. Right? I don't
hmm,
let that define me anymore. And what I've actually come to realize is that we let we let this, but it was trained into us that those labels were important, and that if
yeah,
you want us to succeed, you needed the next label, and if you wanted to be better, you needed that next label. You need that next label, right? It's, you're infantry, but you got to be airborne infantry. And, oh, you're
yeah,
airborne infantry, okay, now you got to be a ranger. You got to have your tab, or you got to be blah blah blah. Oh, well, if you're in the ranger battalion, you should be looking at, maybe the Green Berets or maybe Delta, or like. And it's always
yep,
that
yep.
I need that next, I need that next, I need that next. And now I'm like, I like what I have. I'm still
Yeah.
like, I'm still working to better myself, but I
But in
like
other
what I have.
aspects,
And exactly,
yeah,
I'm just trying to be a better person, but
yep.
I'm happy with who I am.
I love that, man. I love hearing it's, and I can't resonate more with that and more nail on the head than you said, because it's the same thing. I was so embarrassed I got kicked out of Italian,
Yeah.
right? So fucking embarrassed that I didn't really talk about it up until this last year, because I just held on to it because I was like, you fucking loser.
Hmm.
But meanwhile, like, I didn't take into the fact that I'm on fucking, I don't know, 100 milligrams plus of whatever the hell I was taking, plus alcohol, plus I was in a ton of pain. I'm
Yeah.
19 years old, so I don't even know what decisions I'm making half the time.
Hmm.
So I didn't give myself grace.
Yeah.
And now I'm learning, like, dude, you made the best decisions you could based on the information you had and in the group of guys that you're in, right? Because I mean, last thing you want to do is walk up that stairs to the team room and, hey, I blew my back out on that jump. Someone fix me, right? Because you know it as well as I do. Oh, you're a fucking pussy. Suck it up. Stretch it out. You're gonna
Yep.
be fine. So you don't say anything,
Yep.
and that's built into our community,
It
unfortunately.
really is. I think it's getting better now. I think there's a much more, um, people are much more open about it. And I think what the biggest thing that I've noticed actually is that more and more people are recognizing that to be a good soldier, you need to be healthy.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that starts at the very beginning, right? You can't be, there's a point in time, and there is a place for pushing through, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it hurts, cool, keep going.
Yeah.
But there is an absolute point where you go, I used to tell this to all the recruits that I was teaching before I got out, was if you have an actual issue, go see the docs. I
Yeah.
don't like. I'm not going to make fun of you. The guys aren't going to make fun of you. No one cares. Like, but get it on paper first off, so that we can track it, and then we can build a program to get you better and get you back into the game. Because if you
Yeah.
just let it slide, and I mean, I did the same thing with my back when I got blown up overseas, and my back hurt, but I was just like, yeah, okay, whatever.
I can eat through the pain.
Yeah,
I can still
sure.
function somehow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you go see the docs, and you're like, I need some Motrin, and they'll shoot you with, hit you with the airborne Smarties, and you can just chow on those all day long, right? But I came home and my back was not okay, and then I'd go for a
Yeah.
run, and my knees would be just screaming at me the whole time, and I'd just be like, oh, cool,
Yep.
just
Yeah,
carry
and I
on.
didn't, and same thing. I never even filed for disability up until probably 6 years ago. And the only reason
Dang.
I did that is we were walking into Target. My wife's pregnant. We're getting ready to have our first kid. My back was getting really bad again. My back seized up. I literally ate shit in the
Mm-hmm.
parking lot, and I was laying there, and I was like, I can't feel my legs. I can't get up.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm scheduling an appointment. You're going in. So I went in and did x-rays. The doctor, he's like, he's like, did you play professional sports? I'm like, no. He's like, what did you do to your back? He's like, were you in a massive car accident? Like, what did you do? I was like, the only thing I can remember is I used to jump out of planes. He's like, well, did you, okay, you jumped out of planes, but what? And so, I jumped in, I burnt in, and that was the first time my wife heard anything about this. And so even up until 6 years ago, I mean, I didn't file for disability. So I had to have that doctor like write a letter, and he's like, dude, like this guy at 40 years old, 39 years old, his back should not be destroyed like this.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, I can't believe this guy's been functioning this long with this back pain. So I went in and they did the whole, they burnt out all my nerves. They cut a bunch of stuff out. Like they didn't fuse anything because he wants to see how long I can go before they have to fuse it. But
Yeah.
it's again, it's bred into us, right? There's guys and gals out there that are missing limbs that are way more fucked up than me. So I'm not going to file disability either. So
Yeah.
I'm going to eat that pain for the next 16 years. Um,
It's so
so
bad.
yeah,
It's so
you know how it
bad.
goes. All that
Yeah.
stuff just kind of snowballs on
Yeah.
itself, and before you know it, you're spiraling out of control like I was because you never asked for help, and
Yeah.
you didn't know the right way to ask for it.
Yeah. I got really lucky actually when I did my exit medical. The doc was like, okay, so let me tell me what your issues are. And I had gotten some advice from a friend of mine. He was like, in that medical, every ache and pain and whatever it is,
Hmm.
get them to write it down, because then it's on paperwork, and then they have to, the VA has to deal with it because it was done while you were in.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So I walked in there, and he's like, so, what are your issues? And I'm like, well, my knees hurt all the time. My back hurts all the time. My
Yeah.
shoulders hurt all the time. My
Yeah.
ears ring all the time. They went through the whole thing, and the doc was like, how are you walking? And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know, left, right. You just keep doing that. And yeah, herniated disc, torn ligaments and all in my knees, torn ligaments in my shoulders, right? Just stuff that I had never actually dealt with.
Hmm.
I had
Hmm.
just kept going,
Push
right?
through.
You just push through, and you push through. And I I try to implore other veterans, like, work on it. Whatever it is, work on it. If it's, you're having bad dreams, you're having really hard time mental health wise, and you're struggling, work on it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Find whatever it is that works for you, and actually work on it. If it's physical, find a trainer, find a friggin' work on it so that you
Yeah.
don't just become that injury. Because I know guys that are their injury, right?
Yeah.
Or, yeah, as you
That's
said,
they don't
when
want to
people
get
are
out of their own ways,
exactly
right?
when people say I'm a combat veteran, it's like, don't care, man. Like,
Yeah, and
just
no one
back
else
up.
and no one else cares. And like I
No
told
one
you,
else
like
cares either.
I'm not poo-pooing that to anybody, right?
Yeah.
But when I've heard people say that, like that's the first thing out of their mouth. I'm a combat veteran. Okay, that, again, we're measuring trauma dicks here.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate your time. I'm glad you went to combat. I'm glad you're back home. But if you're trying to use that as a tattoo to prove something, cool, man. But I don't know what to tell you. Like
Yeah.
we're all fucked up. Can we just
Yeah.
help each other
Yeah,
here?
exactly. Right. Like we were talking earlier, right? Huzzah, you're king of shit mountain.
Yeah,
Awesome. Now what? Right?
yeah.
What are we gonna do next? And if people want help, they need to get off that high horse of look how
Well,
messed up I am.
well, that and like you can own your shit and say, yeah, I messed up, but own it to the fact of now how can I better myself?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of veterans, and I've seen it, where they are getting better, but they stop a certain protocol because it's like I don't want to lose my disability. I need that
Yeah.
check. I need that money. So then they get, they become kind of a spoke in the wheel of that
Mm-hmm.
system that just keeps doing this. And same thing. Now they're drinking more, and now they're taking more pain meds, and they're taking more SSRIs, and now it screws up their body. So now what do they do? Now they're on testosterone replacement because
Mm-hmm.
their body's not making the testosterone it used to because they're on all these fucking medications. So like eventually you got to jump off the hamster wheel, and I
Yeah.
think that's where you're starting to see the conversation of ketamine and plant medicines be such a huge conversation, not only in the states here but Canada. You guys are being kind of the first to legalize psilocybin and MDMA
Mm-hmm.
and things of that nature. So we should look to those and say, how do we mitigate and put a standard to these medications for therapeutic means? And the government's got to start getting behind some of this stuff. Like I want to scream to high hell that if you really give a shit about veterans and if you really give a shit about mental health, like you will reschedule these drugs ASAP and you will find
Mm-hmm.
a way to make these drugs um, facilitated in areas where people can get actual help as opposed to just here's some more pain pills or here's some more SSRIs just to numb you and let you walk through life.
Yeah. Yeah, you said it, man. It's when you actually care about the person as
Hmm.
a person, not
Yeah.
just as like a check in the box. And it's kind of funny. You were talking about earlier where the Ranger indoctrination training
Yeah.
uh, changed names to something at some point, and I was giggling because I was like, that got some officer promoted for leading change, right? He
That's it.
check, he got that check in the box.
That's it.
but but it's the same concept. It was like if you actually care about the veterans as a whole,
Hmm.
then you would do whatever it took to heal them or
Yeah.
help them heal themselves, I should say, not heal them.
Yeah.
But it's just not there. I mean, we see
No.
it here in Canada all the time too. There was, the whole maid incident just recently. Um, and people are just backpedaling and oh my god, it wasn't me, or maybe it was them, and that's not what we said, and that's not what we meant, and it's like just shut up, help,
Yeah. Yeah.
help. That's it, just
Yeah.
help. And if somebody had a flat tire, actually I got a good story about this one, and then we'll wrap it up. But the uh I was driving home one day from hockey, and I saw a guy pull over on the side of the road, and I was like, it's like midnight, and I'm like, I should probably stop and see how he's doing. And like, it sucks in the middle of the night trying to deal with the car. So I got out, jumped out of my truck, and hey man, what's up? And he's like, my tire blew, I don't know what to do.
Mm.
And I was like, you don't know what to do? What do you mean? He's like, I don't know. I don't know. And I'm like, do you have a spare? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, let's go take a look. And
This
we,
dude's never turned a wrench in his life.
nope, never. And okay, cool. You've never turned around in your life. Uh, and he's now all of a sudden, and he had just moved from Ontario. He had no coverage there. Like, he was just stuck on the side of the road. And I was like, well, let me help. So we got the thing out, and I showed him how to do it. And I did the first couple, and I got him, showed him how to do the things. That way, the next time it happens,
He's got an
he's good to
idea.
go. Right.
Yeah.
But if I were just to like step up and be like, yo, what's up? And he's like, I blew my tire, and I just take over, he's not learning anything. That's not real help. I'm just fixing it for him and fixing the
Hmm.
problem,
Hmm.
which is, I think, what a lot of veterans look for is they want that fix. Give me I want this fixed. How do you fix this? Well,
Yeah.
right now we give you drugs and it numbs you out. And they go, okay. But that's not the actual answer to, that's not the long-term answer. That's the right now, this just covers
Yeah.
the symptoms versus, you know, what's the old adage? Give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach him how to fish, feed him for a lifetime,
Yeah.
right? Or the
Or
keep a
you can.
man warm, start a fire in front of him, or light him on fire, he'll be warm the rest of his life.
Yeah. Or
Whatever.
the very easy one of you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right?
Exactly.
And we see this, like, again, you've seen it, I've seen it with veterans reaching out. They, hey, I need some help, and I'll say, hey man, I'm a huge plant medicine advocate. Like, that changed my life. That's what I know worked for me. I know it can work for you. And funny thing is, I actually had a Canadian firefighter who was following me, and he essentially did the same thing. Him and I had a call, and I told him about ketamine. I think he kind of poo-pooed it and was like, yeah, whatever, pal. He's watched us progress with Mental Joe and was like, shit man, I gotta try this. He went,
Hmm.
did ketamine. I got a message from him. I was like, dude, you're right. Ketamine saved my life. So same thing. Like, I brought him to the water. You just got to drink, man. You got to figure out what tools you want to help yourself. So
Exactly.
I'm going to scream it to high heaven because that's what I know worked for me.
Hmm.
Maybe that tool's not what you need. Maybe you need an ayahuasca. Maybe you need jujitsu to get kicked in the face every single freaking day to
Hmm.
understand you don't want to keep beating your head against the wall. Each thing's a tool, but you've got to, at the end of the day, you and I both know, along with others, you got to put the work in. You
That's
can't
it.
just take a pill and say, oh, I'm fixed. It's not going to
Yeah.
happen.
It's the day to day, right? It's the everyday waking up, and it's wanting to be better. And
Yeah.
I want to do today better than I did yesterday, and I want to do tomorrow better than I did today, and so on and so on and so on and so forth.
Yep.
I
100%.
put a post out a little while ago, and I was like, tomorrow is where we aim, but today is where we work,
That's it.
and just that's it across the board.
I love it.
Um, so first off,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being on here, brother. It has just
Yeah. Thanks for having
been
me, man.
awesome chatting with you, and I can't thank you enough for being here. But if before we get into the final little situation here, any last thoughts, any points on ketamine that we didn't get across, or on plant medicine, or
No, I think we're good. I think we're good on that. As far as the plant medicine goes. Again, there's and I know, and we have it on our website. I've got a ton of research on there,
mm-hmm,
and whether it's a podcast, whether it's a video, whether it's an article, I've got other organizations and people that are very knowledgeable in that plant medicine world that is essentially on mentaljoe.com. So not only do we want to be an apparel company that draws attention to mental health on a daily, and that's why one of my biggest pet peeves is you've seen it, like, oh, let's do 22 push-ups to bring awareness to veteran suicide. Well, what the fuck are you actually doing?
mm-hmm,
Cool, you brought awareness to to a pandemic by doing 22 push-ups, but I don't know how that's helping anybody.
yeah,
I've gotten backlash on that for saying that, but I'm like, well, fuck, I created an apparel company. What's the biggest thing nonprofits struggle with? Money, capital.
yeah,
So
yep,
if I can raise capital by apparel as we grow, I can just write checks to these foundations that need money. And I have this residual thing, this growing company that, like I said, as we grow, and we're going to grow, we're in the right space, we're on the right track, we're going to be able to help people out in a very
yeah,
big way, and hopefully change that conversation around mental health, as opposed to
yeah,
a month or a week. No, let's talk about it every day.
yeah,
Everyone
yeah,
struggles every single day. Why do we need a specific month to talk about this shit? So,
yeah, exactly. I uh I actually did the 22 push-up challenge. I've done it a few times. Um, and I realized after the first time I did it was that all we were doing was putting videos of people doing push-ups online. Like,
that's my whole
hooray!
point. Yeah.
Uh, the next time I did it, I stopped and had like I had like a thought on it, and be like, I deal with depression, and I deal with this, and these are my thoughts today, and then I would do push-ups. And then the last time I did it, actually, it worked out quite nicely. Was I did Instagram Live, and I invited somebody else in, and we
Mhm.
talked about some of the issues they had, and then we did push-ups together. But again, it
There you
was
go.
always about, like, it's about, you got to add a little bit more. You got to
Hmm.
dive deeper as into why we're doing it, and then work on that from there. But anyway, um, so if somebody wanted to find you, social media, internet, whatever, you got a website, you got social media stuff, how would they find you?
Yeah. So if you're looking to get in contact with me or just kind of follow us, it's at Mental Joe Apparel. That's our Facebook and Instagram. I'm not into the big Twitter stuff. I think it's toxic, so I stay away from it. TikTok, same thing. I stick to, I guess you'd say, the middle-aged man social media, Facebook and Instagram. And then we're on the World Wide Web at mentaljoe.com.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm actually in the same boat. Twitter, I have an account, but I don't really use it. And,
I'm the same way, brother. I'm the same
just
way.
it's so bad. Plus I'm a talkative person, right? So anytime you limit the amount of characters I get, I'm already over like
I'm screwed. Yeah, because I
yeah,
have to
it's just I can't do
rethink
it.
how I'm going to bring this conversation to whatever it is, 30 characters or whatnot. I can't
Yeah,
do it.
exactly. I
I'm
just
out.
yeah. There's not enough space to get across the point that I want to get across, so I don't too worry
Exactly.
about it. But
Yep.
yeah, again, I can't thank you enough, brother. It has been awesome. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk soon.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you. Thanks for having me on.
Chimo, brother.
That concludes another episode of The Toolbox. I really appreciate y'all listening. It has been my absolute pleasure bringing you this guest. If you enjoyed what you heard, please like, share, subscribe, do all that other wicked stuff. It helps me keep the lights on. To all those out there putting it on the line every day, I just want to let you know that I appreciate you. Military, veterans, first responders, civil servants, you name it. Keep this place running, and I really do appreciate it. So thank you. Don't forget, stay open, stay humble, stay focused, with grace, not slack. Chimo.